Welcome, everyone. We ask that everyone who's not a principal or a panelist just mute themselves, please. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Hi. My name is Peter Goodman. I'm president of the Education Alumni at City College.
Hola.
And obviously a longtime teacher in the school system and here to welcome you. Every year we run this How to Get a Job panel to assist both principals and staffing schools with the best possible candidates and teachers. Hopefully everybody will mute themselves so we can speak one by one. Let me start off by introducing a few people. David Covington, raise your hand, David, is the president of the Alumni Association. Each graduate will automatically become a member of the association, free for the first year. And we hope that you'll keep your membership up because the Alumni Association does things like this. It provides assistance to students, and it provides support for the college. We just got finished a big fight with the state to get proper funding. We were reasonably successful, and we hope that once you get a regular job and start working, you understand that not only a teacher, but you're an advocate for education in general. So David, thanks a lot for joining us. Edwin Lamboy is the Dean of the School of Education. He's the boss of everybody, and a very gentle one. And he has the very, very complex job of running this very, very complex organization and making sure that everybody gets the best possible education. Because the future of the city is in your hands, because it's our graduates that are going to teach our kids in school. In my third year of teaching, I had this really, really smart kid. And he was a little intimidating. He was so smart. And he moved on and everything else. And now he's the majority leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer. So you never really know who's going to be in your class. You do the best job you can for every single kid, and you hope that they have successful lives. I want to introduce you also to Zena, who is the union rep in District 5. And once you become a teacher, you'll become a union member. Whatever questions you have about pension or certification or anything, you can speak with Zena, and she visits schools on a regular basis, and she's going to be my successor next year. So let's start off by asking Zena to ask a few questions to our principals so they can begin to spread their wisdom among those of you who are hoping to get jobs over the next few weeks or months. Zena?
Good afternoon, all. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to start, as Peter said, I am the district rep for the UFT, for the which is the United Federation of Teachers. And normally in the capacity of a union worker, you think of the protection of rights and giving advice and solving issues and negotiations and contracts and things of that nature. But today here in District 5, I also am serving as the Education Alumni Association, and to help ensure that District 5 has and gets great individuals who are dedicated and passionate about going into the field of education. And today, some of our leaders from District 5 are with us to be able to answer some of your questions. And I'm just going to start by introducing the panel. And on the panel, we have our Deputy Superintendent, Dawn DaCosta. We have, the CFA rep, also the principal at PS 154, Elizabeth Jarrett. We have Carrie Ann Hazel, who's the principal at PSMS 46. We have Wanda Acevedo, who's the principal at PS 194. And we have Principal Cynthia Ball, who's the principal at PS 192. I think I got all the principals that are on. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to start with one question, and anyone who wants to answer can either just raise their hand or move or jump in with a thumbs up, or just raise your hand so we can, I can figure out who wants to answer the question. Ms. Jarrett, why don't we start with you? Can you just tell us
Just a minute. You've forgotten your phone.
tell us a little about your school and the qualities you look for in a prospective teacher?
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Jarrett. I've been a principal here for many years. I think I'm one of the senior principals in the city. I am the vice president of NYSESPA, and which is the Elementary School Principals Association, and every year we go through the listing and get the years of principal. So I think I'm the second senior principal in the city. And I've been doing this, as you know, for a long time. It's not one thing, it's not a cookie cutter, because if it was cookie cutter attributes, then we would all be finding magnificent candidates and running excellent schools, which we all try to do. Excuse me, I have a visitor. Bye, Harvey. I look for candidates who are bright, curious, and willing, team players, because there are some people who know everything, but the curiosity and the passion is there, because you have to know what you want to do, and someone who loves children and always willing to learn, willing to share what they know, and someone who's willing to just take on challenges, because every day it's new, and the job has evolved over many years that I've been doing it. And saying that I've been a senior principal doesn't mean that I've mastered everything, because each year there are different challenges and different things that we all have to learn. So it's a matter of being in a state of constant learning, being open to take on new challenges and learn what's being tossed at us. So I look at candidates who are willing to show those same attributes.
Thank you. Dr. Hazel, the same question. Can you just tell us a little about your school and the qualities that you look for in prospective teachers?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am the principal of PSMS 46, the Author to Pants School, home of the Tigers. Go Tigers. I'm looking for soft and technical skills in my candidates. Some of the soft skills that I'm looking for is lots of energy, very high energy, very adaptive, very flexible, and someone who is willing to work collaboratively, similar to some of the attributes that Principal Jarrett had said. Technical skills, I'm looking for people who know their content. So if you're working with early childhood, I definitely want you to be Orton Gillingham trained. So knowing those phonics and phonemic awareness skills are very important to our elementary school and even upper elementary, middle school. I expect you to be a content specialist. We are a departmentalized school, so content speciality is something that we really look forward to. And again, those are the technical skills, but like Principal Jarrett said, willingness to take on a challenge, lifelong learner. And I'm always excited when I see high energy and just good interpersonal skills at from an interviewer, because that is the job.
Thank you. I'm going to back up a little bit because I was going by panels as I was introducing, and I went in the order of who I saw. Not having, because I am on my phone and not having a full view of the screen. So I do want to back up and charge it to my head and not my heart, and introduce Deputy Superintendent Dawn DaCosta. So I would like her to introduce herself first, Dr. DaCosta, and tell about herself and the things that she looks for the district and the district vision as a whole.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure it is to be here. I know that our Superintendent, Dr. Davenport, participated on this panel last year, and he was really excited to do that I have been working in District 5 for a long time, maybe about 27 years. I'm not sure, somewhere around that time. And I started working for Principal Elizabeth Jarrett at 154. And so I learned a great deal from her. She's the leader maker. And there's so many people that have come through her school and have gone on to do bigger things across the city because of what we learned from her. So I want to say that first. I served as a teacher for about 15 years and a principal for 11 years in the district, and am now the second year in this role. And as a principal, and even now on the district level, I would agree with the panelists that spoke already. The technical knowledge is important, but even more important than that is a willingness to learn. And so there will be some things you may not be prepared for that you did not experience in your teacher preparation program that you will have to learn once you get to the school. And being a willing learner is a big thing. As a principal, I would always prefer someone that was willing over someone who maybe had more knowledge but lacked personality and relationship skills, because relationships are everything in a school. And you can certainly have a great deal of knowledge, but if you cannot have positive relationships with people, it'll impact what you're able to deliver to students and how you're able to collaborate with your colleagues and with your students, et cetera, parents even, because everything is about relationships. So those things I feel like are really important. And I also really wanted to, and still on a district level, want to know, why do you want to work in Harlem? Why do you want to be a part of this particular community? And always looked for someone that had done their research and was very interested in working in the community and knew a lot about it, had done their research to make sure that this was the right place for them. And also being able to go above and beyond is always a big thing, because schools are small, short-staffed in some cases, and really need people that are willing to go above and beyond the call of duty. So even the other talents and gifts that you might bring to the role are really important as well. So thank you again for inviting me, and we're really in need of some wonderful teachers. And so hope that we can make some great connections through City College.
Thank you. Principal Barr, same question. Tell us a little about your school and the qualities you look for in a prospective teacher.
Good afternoon. I'm Principal Cynthia Barr. My school is Mary McLeod Bethune. We are a pre-K to 5 school, and very similar to the sages who've just spoke. I look for people who want to be in my particular school, not just in the district, people who have done their research and they may offer some things that are not necessarily within the job description. I look for people who've shown a love and passion for children, because number one, we have to love children to do this work. And even when children may not be behaving in the most agreeable way, we still have to show them love and respect. So that needs to come through. I look for people who are willing to demonstrate before we discuss any sort of hiring, what they may, even if the demonstration lesson is not perfect, the way they respond to the feedback they receive is very important to me, because I need someone who has a growth mindset. We all know we go to school, we learn based on our programs, but then there are going to be things, because we're dealing with humans, that school is not going to prepare us for. And I look at how you respond to what's happening in the room. So very similar to what others have shared. I definitely agree with Dr. DaCosta that relationships are extremely important, and how you develop relationships with students and families can make or break a school year. So those are some of the qualities I look for.
Principal Acevedo, same question.
Hello,
Tell us,
good,
okay, good.
good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Wanda Acevedo, and one of the things that is very special about my community is that it's a small school. We only have one class per grade level, and being such a small school, it gives us the opportunity to be a very tight-knit community. And when we're bringing on new people, we're looking for people who share our philosophy and who believe in children first, and also exemplify our core values of perseverance, responsibility, optimistic, and excellence. And working with, when we think about all of those things, we think about people who want to give back to the community and do it with grace and do it with integrity. So just like all of my other colleagues said, the relationships are important, the overcoming challenges and being a lifelong learner and a critical thinker are all important.
Thank you. Principal Austin?
Oh. Good evening. Hi, I'm Principal Austin from PS 30. So some of the qualities that I look for in a candidate, some people already mentioned it already, but integrity is really important. Also being able to adapt, because being in a school community, a lot of things are changing. It changes every single day. I look for a candidate that is passionate about the work, that goes over and beyond with the call of duty, because the work does not end at 2:20 or 3 o'clock. And my school is a community learning school. So like Principal Acevedo mentioned, we are a community, we move as a family. We're all about just coming together, building, and being a bridge between the different cultures, different people in our community, looking beyond the school, making connections with families. And some people also mentioned relationships. Relationships are very important because that helps parents feel like this is a second or a connection to their house. So making those connections, building relationships is highly important when I'm looking for candidates.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go to Dr. Hazel, and I'm just going to ask this question, or anyone who wants to answer actually can raise their hand or jump in. But it's, what is your favorite question to ask in an interview?
I really love challenge questions. So any questions about how you overcome a challenge, and just be mindful of just the way you may talk about, you know, that challenge. Be objective in the way you represent student information, a peer information, administrators information, so on and so forth. But I love asking about what is a challenge or an obstacle that they've overcome, and, you know, listening and hearing their response and answer.
Thank you. Ms. Jarrett, is there a favorite question that you have in your answer?
I'll try to narrow it. Similarly, I'd like to find out a lesson that bombed and how they responded to it, because it tells me how you're able to think in the moment teacher moves. Likewise, I also like to ask, having discussions, I also like to ask, when do you give up on a child? Because we focus on all the things we do, and you know, there's sometimes children show us different sides to get our attention. So one of the questions I do like is, when do you give up on a child?
Okay. Principal Barr?
I like to ask, what do you need to show up as your full self at work each day?
Good question. Principal Acevedo?
I asked similar questions as the rest of my colleagues. I also asked, what book are you reading? Just to see what, are they really a lifelong learner? Are they taking their professional, journey seriously?
That's also one of my favorite questions as well. Principal Austin, you have a favorite question?
Oh, I like to ask, I mean, I know people usually prepare for questions, but I do like to ask, what does humility mean to you? That seems to stump a lot of people because, you know, with this type of job, working with students, working with administration, just being able to take feedback and that response to that question, what does humility mean to you? It says a lot when they respond to that. And I also like when candidates give personal connections and stories that they have of a student that they connected with. And I know it's not a question, but hearing someone make a connection, you learn a lot from those kind of responses.
Dr. DaCosta, what's your favorite question to ask in the interview?
One of my favorite questions was, tell me about something that you love to teach. A lesson that you just loved every minute of it. And so that always helps me to know sometimes people can't think of one. And when you can't think of one, that says something to me about your passion for teaching, because I really do believe that teachers are born. I mean, there are things that you can cultivate, but some people just have that personality. And you have to love this job to do it well. Because like Principal Barr was saying, sometimes, and Principal Jarrett was saying, sometimes it's not going to feel good. And so if you don't love it, you got to be able to love it when it feels good and when it doesn't. And so that question about like, what do you love to teach? What is your passion is where I think you start to hear people's personality and their gifts and you know, because anything people are passionate about, they always teach that thing well. And so that's a question that I love to ask.
Thank you. The next question I have is, how do you determine which resumes to select to interview? So you get tons and tons of resumes. And how do you determine which one are going to stand out? Principal Barr, did I see your hand? Okay, go.
So, if there's a lot of errors, I'm not more likely going to call that person because this is your passion and it also is a writing sample. But I look for people who have shown in their choices a passion for students. Maybe they were summer camp counselors, maybe they've done things after school or working with children alongside their life as they were working towards getting their formal education. So those candidates tend to stick out for me first. Doesn't mean that everyone will have that background, but I do look for service as an underlying occupation or experience within the person's life, because this is a service-oriented job.
Thank you. Principal Jarrett?
I look at, you know, the educational background. I do look at GPA because that is one factor. I look at how the candidate expresses interest and gives information about studies, interests, associations, memberships, because if you're in the if you're an educator and planning to be in the system doing this work, there are organizations that you need to belong to so that you do have this networking and the lifelong learning. So that's one, those are some of the things I do look at.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in on that question? Principal Acevedo? Is there anything that helps you to determine which resume you're going to pull out of the pile?
Yeah, similarly to Principal Jarrett, I also look at hobbies and interests just to see where what can be what assets the person is coming with and what can they contribute to our community.
Thank you. Dr. Hazel?
I would say I do look at grammatical errors, and yes, I do say that, but I contact everyone. If you send me a resume, I will look through it and I will reach out to you. I'm not particular about the school or, you know, the associations, or I will look at your hobbies and interests, but for the most part, you know, while I only partly believe that teachers are born, some people do have the propensity for it. I think it can be developed over time. So I can build you into a person that is will function at my school.
And Principal Austin?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. That was funny. Okay. So I do look at the educational background. I also look at honestly, the address, because I need to make sure that you're going to be able to get to this school and this community. So address is important. And I also look to see like the communities that you work with as well, because, you know, this is a predominantly Hispanic and Black community that I work with. So also that is a consideration in terms of like, have you had experience with working with Black and Brown children before? So that is something that I also look at.
Great. The next question is, how can a candidate prepare for an interview? Do you invite them to teach a lesson as part of the process?
Can I answer?
Yes.
Typically, sometimes it's very late or early in the year. So if I get an early candidate, I will ask for a demo. Even over summer school, we will typically ask for a demo to come. And, you know, one of my colleagues it would be more than accommodating if I don't have summer school here to, you know, lend me one of their summer site classes. So be prepared to teach when you come, and it will sometimes be on the second round of interviews. If I'm interested in you as a candidate, then I will ask you to come in and demo. Typically after the demo, I do give some feedback, things to work on, whether I'm picking you or not, but at minimum, you should expect at least 2 rounds of interviewing.
Thank you. Ms. Javits, you want to jump in with that on how to prepare? How can a candidate prepare for an interview?
I think Dr. DaCosta mentioned that earlier, research. If you are looking at a school, it's good to do your research so that you know what the school community is like. Look at the school data. And different factors so that you're able to make a decision. I know some of us want jobs, but you also want a job where you're going to be successful and you fit in. So if you pick a school just because it's a school and then your goals and the school's goals are misaligned, that doesn't make great, it's a great experience for anyone. And the children are what we need to think of first. So do your research, look at what the school has to offer, look at what you have to offer the school, know your strengths and your weaknesses, what you're able to tolerate, what you're not able to tolerate. If there are demands that are being required, and some of that is there on the school website. Am I able to do this? Am I willing to put in the long hours? There's a lot of collaboration. Is this something I'm willing to do? So make sure all of that is done. And again, too, the demonstration lesson, that's something that we do, and we use the summer school programs to really make sure we get a sense of what you're able to do within the classroom. And again, that's not ideal because it's not the class you're going to be working with per se, but it gives us an insight of how you are able to plan for a lesson, how you're able to implement, and how you relate with the students. And again, how you take the feedback.
Dr. Dakota, you want to jump in with that question?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with everything that was said about, make sure that you want to work in that community and that you care enough to do the research. Because sometimes people will say, oh, I just want to work in Harlem, or I just want to work at a school, or it's convenient for me. And then there's not a purpose, because there are many, many schools. So you definitely need to choose a school, like Principal Jarrett was saying, that is in line with your philosophy, because then you're constantly working against what the school may hold as their vision. The other thing I want to say, like Principal Hazel was talking about with the demo lesson, is I used to also, if it was possible, have other teachers join the demo, so that we could also get the perspective of teachers. And then we would also ask the students afterwards what they thought about the teacher. And so all of those things sort of feed into, so that, because hiring someone is not just about the principal, it's about the whole community. And so it's important to get the feedback of the community, so that they can support this person as a family once they come on board.
Thank you. Is someone else wants to jump in with that?
I
Go ahead.
I'm in agreement with everything said, but I also would like to say, to be honest, because, we often meet people who want a job and it's not the job. So if you really are passionate about something, you can share that, because maybe if we can't hire you, we have colleagues in the district that we might be able to reach out to say, I have this amazing candidate. I can't offer them what they're looking for, but maybe you can find a home elsewhere. So sometimes people say what they think we want to hear versus what they actually feel. And if you want to come to Mary McLeod Bethune, I want to know that you want to be there, not just, as others have said, in Harlem or somewhere convenient or close to home. So I think, being honest in those interviews, especially if you have dual licensure and, you really want to work as a gen ed, but we're only looking for sped teachers, like, feel free to say that so that you can get the most aligned position.
Thank you. And I do want to add that in the many levels that I've been in education, whether it was for the UFT interviewing or at the school-based level or doing, roundtables at the district, one of the things that I'd like to really, really thumbtack is come to an interview like you're coming for an interview, not like you've rolled out of bed. Right? So no matter what day and age we're in, and I know, we used to always say, make sure you have your navy or black suit and white shirt. It may not be that strict these days, and the young folks will say, oh, nobody goes on interviews like that. Even if you just have on a shirt and slacks or, shoes, don't come on an interview like you just came and rolled out of a bed with a slogan t-shirt on. For me, I'm not hiring you. I really am not. And that's honesty. And that's something that I feel like, is very important, that you got to come prepared. Like someone said, show up as your best self, right? Not someone that's, oh, I'll just go drop in. I happen to be, I heard about this interview that's taking place. Let me just go try my hand at it. You're coming with a passion. You want to fit into a community, and you do want to show up as your best self. So that is something that you should take into consideration as well. And it's funny because sometimes we think of looking at, resumes or preparing for interviews, that is just what's on paper, right? Lots of times you don't know where you're going to meet someone, right? So I think having your, as they call it, the elevator pitch, have your elevator pitch ready. Know what your passion is. Know how to spin who you are in 1 to 2 minutes. Sometimes you might be sitting next to someone and may not know that they're a principal or that they're the deputy superintendent, but be ready to sell yourself. And that may be the time that you can actually get hired based on a chance encounter. right? So those are two of the things that I think about when I'm thinking about hiring and you know, pulling resumes. And then also your follow-up, right? Like you've gone on the interview and like I think Principal Barr said, they may not be able to use you, but she may say, oh, but I have a colleague. Let me check back in. Maybe you haven't heard from someone in a couple of weeks. Do your due diligence and check back in. Say, oh, I interviewed you, you know, is the position still available? Maybe the position isn't, but again, they may be able to refer you to someone else. So your follow-up is important as well. All right. So I just wanted to add those components into it as well.
Let me add a few things, Zena.
Uh-huh.
You should practice your interview. Most people, they never have been interviewed. This is the first time. You should get a partner and video an interview and then look at yourself and be disgusted because you may have mannerisms you never knew you had. So practice interviewing. Have someone interview you, you interview them, so you get a little better at it. When I was on a team, the first question I would ask was, what's the best lesson you've taught in the last few weeks, and how do you know it? Because I want someone who is self-reflective. I tell people you can't change the output without changing the input. When you finish a lesson, you should always ask yourself, was it successful? And how can I make it better? And I used to take notes at the end of each lesson. What can I try the next day? Because this is a teaching changes from day to day. Monday, you may have had a great lesson. Tuesday, not very good. Wednesday, it flopped. Thursday was great. So keeping track of what you did each day when things worked makes you better. And being reflective is very, very important. You could never say it was the kid's fault, because in order for the kids to change, you have to change and become better at what you're doing.
Yes.
And
So
I'm a big believer in peer observation. I think schools should have the opportunity for teachers to observe each other. So people on a grade should be able to watch someone else on the grade and then have a facilitated interview. In other words, rather than a supervisor observing you and telling you what to do, which of course happens all the time, it's important for teachers to look at teachers and get really collaborative doing the nitty-gritty things. Because as all these principals have said, collaboration is the key, relationships. You want the sum of the parts of the school to be greater than the whole. You want everybody to be participating, collaborating, and coming up with better ideas. And I think the key to successful schools is a high level of collaboration so that everybody knows what everybody's doing and everybody's willing to make suggestions to everybody else. Zena?
yeah, so now we're going to open up for questions for a Q&A. You can put your question in the chat, or if you can, I can just call on you, but I can go to the chat if you've placed questions there. So there's a question from Joseph, and the question is, what do you look for in a demo lesson? Thanks, Karen.
Yeah. Hi, Joseph. Great question. So with our school community, we use the explicit instruction approach. And so we utilize the workshop model so that I do, we do, you do. And so, you know, clear bite-sized mini lesson with a really good teacher exemplar. Then there is another example which the children and you kind of work and think through. And then finally, you set the children up to go off and practice something. So typically, Joseph, that's the model we use. And I'm sure if you've read anything in graduate school about Anita Archer, that's, that's everybody's lens that we use. We're not a constructivist school yet, but right now that is the instructional model we use.
I think in addition to that, there has to be some thought into how are you supporting the needs of diverse learners. So anything in your plan that reflects considerations for students with IEPs, our English language learners is also something that we look for.
We're also looking at teacher moves because you may have planned the lesson and you're executing and you're looking and no one is getting it. So how do you make in the moment changes to make sure that you're then engaging the kids? So that's one of the things we're looking for.
Yeah, I look for engagement, as Elizabeth said, with the students, those connections that you're making as you're teaching. I think the kids have a way of just being able to discern whether this is a good fit for the school. So kids engage with the work. And to me, it's not so much about whether or not the objective was achieved for that demo lesson, but it's the connections that you're making with the students.
There's another, go ahead.
I was gonna just chime in and say, I'm looking at how are you monitoring? So when we have that reflective conversation at the end of the lesson and you tell me it was a success, how do you know? What was your method to monitor? What were you looking for in terms of keys to whether or not students achieve the objective? So I'm looking at your assessment in instruction.
Okay, there's another question in the chat. Would you answer a question or questions that were cited as example interview questions? And anyone can answer. So again, the question is, would you answer a question that was cited as an example interview question?
So one of the questions that I remember that was asked, was about, did someone ask? Well, I'll answer my question. So my question that I gave was around what book are you currently reading? I would, as a graduating, incoming fresh into the profession, I'm looking for answers around not only professional text, maybe motivational text, inspirational text, right? Like I'm looking to see people that are taking the time to practice self-care through reading, but also seeing if there's opportunities for taking initiative of their own professional development.
I can jump in here and also say that like sometimes people will say to me that they need to feel supported, and that's very individualized. And so what does support look like for you as an individual person? So for me to feel supported, I have to feel that someone is actively listening to my concerns and responding in kind. So that feels like support to me, whereas someone might need to go to a professional development, someone might need other things. So just I would answer in a way that's just very explicit about how you have performed best within, to the answer to my question of how you can show up in the school, what has made your school experience successful for you, and how you would translate that over to your work experience.
We have another question. For the demo lesson, does the lesson have to make right at that moment, or can I use my previous lesson that I taught?
Depending on the grade, I will actually, and the year that you come into, the time of year you come in, I will give you the standard that the children are working on, and something that they're familiar with. So typically I will let you know what standard is being taught, and I will direct you to plan a lesson around that. I have never, sorry, used anyone's previously planned lesson because it has to be, we're very standards aligned and driven here. So we want to make sure that the information that we're presenting to our children is something that is state aligned. And so I typically ask the teacher what the children are working on, what's the next lesson, and I will ask you to plan a lesson around that standard.
Dr. Sandra Murphy?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Hi. I put in chat, but since you called, where are the Black male principals? Where are you? Where are the Black male teachers? When I did my dissertation, it was based on talking to the teacher, getting the teacher to respond how he or she feels about their classroom, feels about the administration, feels about the support, feel about how the parents are interacting with the teacher, the student, and in the building. Is there engagement? When we deal with Black children, and I live in Harlem, so you know I'm there, I'm in the Mecca. And you know how I feel. Well, you don't know how I feel because you don't know me. But I work on the premise of Malcolm X. Malcolm said, we got to get the kids. That was 60 years ago. We have to teach our children then and now. Passing the baton down is mandatory in a society in which we're living, where our children are feeling the brunt of hate, low self-esteem. They don't feel like they're worthy. Our children can't read, sisters. They can't comprehend. They can't understand and articulate. And they're great teachers in this room. They're great principals in this room. And we're doing, and I'm sure you're doing great jobs, for what's happening in the system. Are we afraid of the system? You know, this may be a little off the grid, but are we afraid to really do what we need to do to educate our children properly and sincerely and go the extra mile? Or are we just going along to go along to keep the job, to keep our position? And are we puppets? Are we puppeteering? Are we in a position where we got to keep the funding in our school? So that means we got to go along with what the Board of Ed says and what the commissioner says and the chancellor says, and all these folks that really don't have interest in our children the way they should. I'm going to land my plane, as they say. But
thank you for that.
We need to answer these questions. I want to open an after-school program dealing with these problems where you leave off and I'll pick up. But let's work together. We need to save our children.
Well, thank you for that, Dr. Murphy. There's one more question in the chat from Alex Adams. To what extent does the promotion of self-regulated learning skills something you look for teachers to care about in your schools at the elementary level? I'm going to read it again. To what extent the promotion of self-regulated learning skills something you look for teachers to care about in your schools at the elementary level?
So Alex, that shows up in a lot of different ways in our classrooms. So it shows up in the peer-to-peer conversations, the turn and talks. It shows up in, you know, the independent practice part where you send them off. And while, yes, you have the teacher facilitated group, but most of the children, or partly at some juncture of that independent practice time, is working alongside each other and collaboratively. So the expectation is, but they have to see really strong models of that. We have to routinize that. We have to teach them how to transition into all of those things. It's not something that is just automatic. And so having strong routines around turn and talks, having strong routines around think pair shares, having strong routines around independent work, guided work, and small group work is something that we practice within our within our classrooms with our children. They start as early as kindergarten, and you can see them do the need and need. I was in a kindergarten class in an observation today, and they were partner reading, and the children knew where to put their iPads, put the iPads here. They knew to snuggle up together on the mats and read independent of the teacher. They had their routines down, and the transition was clear. Teacher had her groupings on the Promethean board. They knew where they were going. They knew what the expectations were. This is May, so it should look very fluid. It should look very strong. She had 4 groups, 4 pairs of children doing one thing. Teaching assistant was with the guided group. She was with another guided group. So they did a rotation within that independent time. So the self-regulated learning skills can happen. They do happen. They have to be taught into and practiced on a daily basis.
Ditto.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Lamboy, did you want to have some closing words before you jump off?
He might have jumped off already, Zena.
Yes, okay. Okay. So I think that was the last of the questions. So I'm going to go, is that the last? Yes. So I'm going to hand it back over to Peter Goodman, the president of the Education Association.
This was absolutely great. The discussion was at a very high level. We recorded this. It'll take us about a week to get it in good shape. We're going to post it on our website so that you could use it wherever you want. This was really a high-level discussion, and I think teachers should have an opportunity to watch it as part of an instructional tool. We're coming to the end of what has been a very difficult year for all of us. At City College, as you well know, it's been up and down, but still in all, graduation is at the end of May. Hopefully it'll be in person. We'd like our kids to be able to bring their families to graduation, doing everything possible to do that. And once again, I want to thank you, thank you, thank you. I wish we could pay a stipend, but we can't. But you did a great job. And if people get jobs in your school, they'll be lucky because they'll be working with some of the finest principals in the city.
Sorry, Pete, I do want to just ask the principals to put their emails in the chat so that, you know, if people need to contact schools and want to be able to forward resumes and things of that nature, that they have a way of contacting the principals. So if you all would put your emails in the chat, and then those candidates that are on can get the chat from there so that they can have that information. Thank you. This was really wonderful. And I appreciate the collaborative work that we do in Community School District 5. And that is part of what makes us special. And it does, as Dr. Murphy said, we are a Mecca. And that's part of the work that we do from a principal like Principal Jarrett, growing leaders, and from myself to Dr. Vacosta to many others, and the work that we do as a community. It is one that is very collaborative, and hence is allowing us to move District 5 forward. So thank you so much for that.
Applause for everybody. Great. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Have a great evening. Thank you all, principals, for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.